Relax and sink in with an open mind, an eye for the curious and strange. Come and go with me.
All right, here we are with another Cosmic Salon, and I have a very special guest today. His name is Mannun, and he has the channel Witch in the Working, and I'll get into that in a minute. I am going to read his bio off his YouTube page. So, welcome to Witch in the Working, where they delve into the enchanting world of Wicca and witchcraft. Join them as they explore all aspects of the craft, from the mundane to the mystical, the earthly to the ethereal, and everything in between. Their discussions cover a wide range of topics, including paganism, spells, rituals, sabbats, esbats, magic, covens, circles, familiars, realms, talismans, and the divine entities of gods and goddesses. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner or just starting your journey, they invite you to join them and their community and embrace the magic that surrounds us all. And they end with "Blessed be," and I can get down with that. So what I have here is in my sidebar, Mannun's page came up, and I was intrigued by a subject he was talking about that is special to my heart. And I have certainly been very vocal about this subject, so inclusiveness, basically, in paganism and the craft. And I have definitely had a heavy stance, and this was one of the best essays, monologues I had heard. And then I went on to listen to many other monologues from Mannun, and I just felt like this energy from this soul named Mannun was so grounded and wise and centered, and brought in a full spectrum of understanding and bridging, which I think everyone needs in the world, period. And so I'll say this out here in public. Everyone knows I don't use titles anymore, and most people in the audience know I have really an illustrious pedigree that is a legit one through a legit genealogist. And not to say, when I say legit, I mean like a professional, and I'm not putting anything, no, there's no connotation on that, but everything's really, really researched and done out. And I certainly have had a lot of feelings having been involved in all this my whole entire life. And I'm a Gen Xer. I think Mannun is as well. And I found myself, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, but we're not going to linger on this. I found myself in the last, 20 years, kind of being repelled by the add water and stir high priestess thing that started. I noticed it around, I think, probably 2000, late 90s. And then it bloomed into like all these young practitioners in bikinis and heavy makeup, and then it spurted into like this million shades of the craft, and hedge witch, bush witch, kitchen witch, ground witch, salt witch. It was just, to me, it's like this need for titles really hit me wrong. Let me put it that way. I just decided to back away. And I know a lot of the old school people that wrote books that are now dead, with proof. It's not just smoke. And I found myself having to defend many of them on different sites because I think they've been misunderstood, and the new generation has a certain zeal for categorying, and I don't know. There's something that feels like it's been squoze out the magic sense goes out, and this separation of everything had just hit me wrong. So I totally backed away, and that's where I am now. However, I've also loosened my stance on hereditary and all this. And because I separated the idea of the practice from people that have ties into being persecuted in Germany and Salem and Italy, and this goes into even the French Huguenots and the Merovingians and the Scythians and all the way back, and having a lot of this stuff, well-known people in my actual lineage, I felt a certain sense of responsibility for so long, and in the workings I was doing, particularly in Des Moines, Iowa, under the Temple of the Goddess, and being around for Circle Sanctuary and all the stuff Starhawk was doing, and Well of Avalon and Starwood and all that earlier stuff from the 80s and early 90s, I don't know, I got burned out somewhere along the line, and my life took a different focus. And it's just like anything where you just practice, you are just what you are. And so I just stopped paying attention, but I saw this video from Mannun, and it was so beautifully done, so well done. I was moved by it. And so that's why I wanted to have you on, Mannun. And I really enjoy the way you bring all this to the table, and how you could touch someone like me that has a little bit of, back off. I have a lot of genealogical ties to the Salem stuff, and I just feel like it got over. Like direct lineages, not uncles and stuff, direct. The actual Witch Museum is my direct 14 back great-grandmother's house. It almost like hurts to see it kind of look so Disney now. And
commercialized.
Yeah, it's really stung me in a hard way. And I'm in a balance now, but it just is surprising to me sometimes. And so we need more people in the world on all fronts like you that can put logic and balance and a calming effect into everything. And this is what I think you are so talented at, and this is why you're here. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring you on. I really enjoy your presence in the world, and I thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. I love the platform. I love being able to express my opinions, which is really all they are. It's just my opinions of how I feel. That's why I say at the beginning of every video, this is just my view on things. I really feel like there's a lot of people who don't talk about some of the things I talk about, though. And being that I've been doing this for over 30 years, I have a lot of opinions. So I have a lot of opinions to talk about. And like I said, I really feel like a lot of people don't bring them up and don't talk about them. And that's really how I come up with my videos. I really literally just be thinking about something during the week or whatever, and be like, hey, I need to talk about that. I'll have an issue. I'll be online and see something on Facebook or something, or another YouTube or something, and see something I like or don't like or agree with or disagree with. And I'm like, I gotta put my feelings on that, and I'll just talk about it, and some people agree with me. Some people don't. I accept everybody for whatever their opinion is, as long as their opinion is not, as long as it's something that's constructive.
Yes.
If it's not constructive, I will just delete their comment, which happens all the time. I get people on all the time that say stuff like, may the Lord Jesus Christ save your soul and stuff like that, which I just delete because there's no reason for it to stick around there. Or if somebody says something that's just completely asinine, that doesn't need to be on the chat, but but as far as if somebody has a completely different opinion of me or what I'm talking about, and they see a completely opposite side of it, as long as it is constructive and it's not just insults and stuff, then then I leave it on there for other people to read. I'll challenge them from time to time, but with my own comment back. A big one is a lot of witches, a lot of Wiccans, whatever, pagans. Again, you talked about titles a few minutes ago. Back when I first started this, there was a title of you were a witch or you weren't a witch.
Yes.
That was pretty much it. That was it. I mean, you were either a witch or you weren't a witch. There wasn't any breaking it down from there.
I know.
And then eventually it got to you are, traditional, or you're and nobody ever called it that. They would say, you would be like, like Gardnerian, for instance, or Alexandrian, where they would say traditional Wiccan, or you'd be an eclectic.
Yes. Yep.
And it pretty much broke down into that, which you either initiated or you weren't.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It's easier way to say it like that, and then that ultimately just progressed onwards. But sometimes I get where people will misunderstand something in my videos. Like I just did one where some people came back and they're like, "Oh, I hate Wicca because of the harm ye none, and harm none, do as you will law. That's just unreasonable, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's impossible. And I believe in balance, and I believe in if you can't curse, then you can't heal." And I'm like, that's great, but you're misunderstanding the whole point of "and it harm none, do as you will." People tend to think that a lot of people who will be anti-Wiccan or not like Wicca because they think that they take that statement literally. They take it, whereas people will just be, they're almost like a Wiccan is a Buddhist or something. Like, well, you're not allowed to do any, if somebody comes after you or does harm to you, all you can do is turn the other cheek. It's the Wiccan way. That's not what it's saying at all. It's expressing that there's a balance in everything. And that if somebody comes after you, you totally can go back after them too. It is what it is. It's your choice. But what the "and it harm none" statement is saying is, it's about balance. It's about you making the decisions and thinking before you just act and do things, and realizing that if you do decide to hex somebody or whatever you would do, realize that this is what you're doing in your life, and you have to take responsibility for anything that happens post that.
I so agree with you on this. These are difficult times with language, but watching it like you did, but there was, it's 3 decades ago for you. For me, it's a lifelong thing. Another variance that you didn't mention was like solitary, right? And I remember some of the snobby witch folk that were more organized, like say the Gardnerians, would look down, or the more high magic, because they would separate like that, but would really look down on solitary witches. And once upon a time, there's a man named Scott Cunningham who, for better or worse, I think he did a lot of wonderful work for the greater community. And it's still funny to think about his herb magic video with the 70s board in the paneling in the back and that polyester shirt he's wearing.
I was always so jealous of that video because he had these charcoals that he would just touch with a match and it would just go crazy. And I'm like, how come my charcoals don't do that? I'm like, my charcoals take like 20 minutes to get going.
I know.
I'm like, where are you getting your stuff from?
I know, please share your supplier. He gave a voice to people out there that were in love with the natural world, that were in love with the turning of the seasons, that felt very connected to all that, and were practicing solitary, and they felt no need to get involved in higher magic or with these, different types of Gardner and Alexandrian and all this. And I thought that this was a fine example of, okay, so this is a differentiation. And there's always been bickering in the outer community. There has, it's at a new level, but, the Z Budapest folks from the Starhawk folks and all this stuff. But there was that vibe back then, and it was an interesting vibe. I remember the Gardnerians were very haughty, and it was like everything had a process. And so there was still the thing that goes on today, which you talk about in that video, where it makes you feel othered or outsider, no matter what your pedigree is. I had experienced that in my life too with these people. And then full circle, now Z Budapest has been very harsh sometimes, and through my life, because I've been around her a few times. I lived in San Francisco. I did Starhawk's whole track, and back in the late 80s and early 90s, when she'd come to the Midwest, like Circle Pines, and then I can't remember where it went. Circle Pines, like 3 of them. And Z Budapest I had encountered in San Francisco, and I love the Dianic stuff. I love my coven was all females, but we did open rituals, my main coven, and we had everyone. It was open rituals were everyone, but the core was just all females. And Z Budapest got this thing on her about like man hating and trans hating and all this, and so I found myself in the end having to defend her on Instagram of all places. Right. And so this, I can't think of her name right now. Trees. She's a really wonderful British woman, and they've been around a long time over across the pond. I don't personally know them, but so she did a Wicca day or something during a couple Octobers past, and Z came up. I was responding because I knew a lot of these people personally, and then when Z came up, I just saw this hatred and vitriol, and I mean, I just couldn't believe it. So there I was, because she's harsh, and she's even though I'm Dianic and I'm not trans or anything, so anything she's projecting out in the world didn't affect me personally, but it was me all of a sudden going from in the past, wow, Z's a bitch, to standing up for her. And so, it was a massive amount of people that were just like, she's vile, she's anti this, she's a bigot, blah, blah, blah. And I had to come in and say, listen, she trailblazed what she did. And since when is a witch not allowed to speak freely? When is a witch not allowed to have boundaries? Hello, the circle. I had to come in and bring in this logic of what it was, because everyone was butt sore. And the trans community was very upset because, Z's not having them. She's never been having them. And it's all right. It's all right. And this is the core of some of it. Like, you don't have to love everyone. This is not a hippie movement. And to respect this. And also, that's when I was like, maybe you should try Wicca Light. She can hate if she wants. It is part of it. We should never, I don't think we should find ourselves in a way where we try to polish down the crone and the crone energy. And Z definitely embodies that for me. And she cuts the cord, but, she's also very nourishing as well, but she's harsh, and she knows how to be harsh, and she knows all this stuff. And to come at someone from that angle, and you call yourself a witch, felt very disingenuous to me, and it felt more like that add water and stir kind of religious idea.
Yeah. Yeah, that unfortunately, this new society of, I don't know what you would call it, this new time and age of witchcraft is being met with a community of people that can be very difficult, and subjects that we branch nowadays can be very difficult to talk about as well. For instance, traditional Wicca, what I call traditional Wicca, which is your Gardnerians, Alexandrians, your initiatory practices, your initiatory paths, which Dianic is initiatory, isn't it?
Yes, but when I say Dianic, I don't mean the way it got formed. I just mean I kept it very all female. But yeah, there's a formality around what Z's doing.
Yeah. So with some of these practices, so the reality is we have initiatory practices and we have eclectic practices, again, like what you're saying, and then of course, like you said before, there is also the solitary and the coven work. Both of them have pieces of each other. Like, I am a traditional Gardnerian, have been for 25 years. I was initiated in 2000, but I'm solitary right now. So you don't have to work with a coven to be an initiate. Sometimes it's just life. That's the way life is. Unfortunately, with today's communities, I'm trying to say this in a way that's not like, because it's real easy to offend people here. I'm just going to say it. There's a lot of people today in the communities who embrace the woke culture, I guess you could call it.
Yes.
What they've been mentioning it is the whole woke culture. And it's not a secret. Anybody who doesn't know what it is, they have to know what it is. It's everywhere. And the reality is there's nothing wrong with the woke culture if that's your gig, if that's your thing. But you have to understand that not everybody else is woke. And what you accept and what you cherish doesn't mean that everybody else does. And the thing not to do is to shove it down people's throats. You should never do that with anything. Politics and religion are very easy subjects to try that you get caught shoving it down people's throats, because everybody wants to say that they're right and that their way is right and what they're thinking is right, when that's just not the case. What you're thinking and what you're living and what you're doing is right for you, not for everybody. My point being is that as a traditional Wiccan, there's things like what you were saying about what Z Budapest was talking about, where she said that she doesn't accept it's not she doesn't accept, but the trans community, she has a problem with that, probably going into Dianic Wicca, because in Dianic Wicca they embrace the feminine side of things and the women, the goddess side of things. And if you're a trans woman going into that culture or into that particular scenario, that could be a problem, because some of the people might say, okay, well, because now you get into the whole thing of, well, yeah, you're a trans woman, but you're still a man, which is taboo right there. Like, you can't just say that to these to people who believe that, because they're like, no, I'm not, I'm a woman.
Yeah.
But then there's people on the other side who will say, well, no, not really, and then there's a whole argument that's been going on for years. Back in the 70s, it was in traditional Wicca, whether it was Alexandrian, Gardnerian, whatever it may be, the big argument was homosexuals. Are homosexuals allowed to be in the witchcraft in Wicca? And there was a whole thing that happened there, with people saying, no, you can't be in. Yes, and ultimately, yeah, you can be. You can be a homosexual and be in Wicca. There's nothing that's ridiculous. I mean, I think about it now.
It seems so ridiculous now, but it was a thing.
Yeah, but it wasn't back then. I mean, in the 70s, I was born in 72. So in the 70s, I was just a kid. So this was all beyond me. I learned about this much later in life. To hear that homosexuality was a thing back in the 70s, I was like, wow. But I just went through it myself a couple of years ago, back in the 2021, 22, where a big thing happened in the communities where it was now trans. Can you be trans and be traditional Wiccan? Because in traditional Wicca, in traditional witchcraft, what I call traditional witchcraft, which is a whole nother story. I do not separate traditional Wicca from traditional witchcraft. Gardnerian started as witchcraft. It never was a religion called Wicca. The religion of Wicca didn't come around until way after Gardner started Gardnerian witchcraft.
Right.
It wasn't something Gardner never created something and called it Gardnerian Wicca.
No.
It was called witchcraft. Yep. The word Wicca is only mentioned in his two books that he wrote, his two of his books, his main books, Mastering Witchcraft and Witchcraft Today. The Meaning of Witchcraft and Witchcraft Today. And the only time he mentions the word Wicca in those books is to say Wiccans are people who practice witchcraft. You know, they're a person. They're not there was no religion of Wicca. The religion of Wicca came about after the fact, where Llewellyn kind of coined it. You know, and said, "Oh well, they're called Wiccans, and they made a religion called Wicca." You know, to us, it was just witchcraft back then. My point is that to come full circle is that this whole argument started with you know, people being trans and being in witchcraft and in Gardnerian Wicca, and that because in traditional branches, a lot of the roles and a lot of the things that are practiced are gender based, very very much so. And the way they see it is the god and goddess, there's no lying to the god and goddess in that sense. It's a horrible thing to say, lying. I shouldn't say that. That's why I said it's such a touchy subject. You can't be like, for instance, when it comes, you know, it's traditional to initiate male to female, female to male, and there's no other way it can be done. It doesn't happen any other way. You know, it's just, that's the way it is. However, in the last 5 years, that's been being challenged. Now there's traditional practices out there that are saying, well, we need to change that tradition. We need to make it where a man can initiate a trans woman or a trans man, you know, or a female can initiate a trans man, for instance. Because again, it goes back to the biological sex. It goes back to biological, you know, like, you know, can you, you know, like they say in the thing, I don't know, you might have to cut this out, I don't know, but they have a saying that says you can't initiate pole to pole or hole to hole. It's that simple.
We can say anything we want here. I'm not beholden.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so the big saying is there's no initiation that happens just pole to pole or hole to hole. And it's just that simple. And yes, and they say, well, how dare you look at the biology and how dare you go call somebody because they have a penis or a vagina? And it's like, but that's nature. That's the way it's been for millions of years. That's just the way it is. But that's a whole argument. But now it's been changing. It's been evolving. There are some groups out there now who will accept that and will accept initiating trans men and trans women, how they feel about who they are and their sex. So in other words, they do initiate hole to hole and pole to pole.
I think one of the things for people that had trouble with this initially is for us to remember that at the core of most of this is fertility. And
yes.
and that, so it's not necessarily excluding or being bigoted or anything like that. It's all about fertility, the fertility of the land,